She was always quiet. In a world that loved noise, attention, and boldness, she seemed invisible. At school, she sat in the back row, listening more than speaking. In class, she raised her hand rarely, and when she did, her voice was soft, almost swallowed by the chatter around her. Her teachers thought she was shy, perhaps lacking confidence. Her classmates thought she was just another quiet face in the crowd, someone who faded into the background without anyone noticing. But there was something no one knew, something that had lived inside her for years, quietly waiting for the right moment to emerge. It was music, the piano. Not just simple melodies, but music that had the power to move people, to touch hearts, to make even the busiest, most distracted person pause and listen. She had been playing for years in secret, practicing late at night when everyone else was asleep. Her fingers, small and nimble, moved over the keys with care, coaxing melodies out of an old upright piano that had once belonged to her grandmother. Her parents had noticed her interest in music when she was very young. They had bought her small keyboards lessons and sheet music. But life had been busy. They worked long hours and often didn't have time to sit and truly watch her play. Sometimes they would glance into the living room, see her sitting quietly at the piano and smile without really understanding the depth of her talent. She played for herself mostly, lost in the music, imagining grand concert halls and audiences that would someday hear her. At school, music was only a small part of her life. She was enrolled in a music class, but it was a large class with dozens of students. Most of the time, the teacher focused on the students who were louder, more confident, or more demanding of attention. She was rarely called on. She didn't mind. She liked to observe, to listen, and to practice quietly when no one was watching. But there was a deep longing inside her, a desire to be seen, to be heard, even if just once, and even if just through the music she loved so much. Then one day, her music teacher decided to hold a small recital. Every student was required to perform in front of the class. She hadn't been nervous before. She had done small performances at home, for her parents, for her younger siblings. But performing in front of classmates, teachers, and even a few parents felt different. She could feel her heart beating faster as she approached the piano. She could see the whispers, the half smiles, and the eyes that didn't seem to take her seriously. They expected nothing from her. A quiet, awkward performance from a timid girl who often blended into the background. She sat down and placed her fingers on the keys. The room was filled with murmurs and shifting chairs as people waited for her to begin. Some students giggled quietly. Others were scrolling on their phones, and a few parents were chatting among themselves. No one expected anything extraordinary. She could feel the weight of underestimation pressing down on her. And for a moment, she wondered if maybe they were right. Then she took a deep breath. One finger lifted and pressed a key. The sound rang out clearly, pure and confident. She began to play, slowly at first, testing the piano, feeling its tone and finding the flow of the music. And then something magical happened. The melody unfolded, rich and expressive, carrying emotion she had buried for so long. The notes seemed to dance through the air, filling every corner of the classroom. At first, the students looked up briefly, surprised. A few stopped their whispers. Parents paused their conversations. The teacher, who had expected a simple, timid performance, froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. The quiet girl at the piano was creating something extraordinary. Each note, each chord seemed to tell a story of longing, of hidden passion, of years of private practice and dedication. It wasn't just technical skill. It was emotion, expression, and something that couldn't be taught. The audience fell silent. The whispers and fidgeting stopped. All attention was on her. She was no longer invisible. She was commanding the room, but not with loudness or theatrics, with the music itself. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, dancing across the keys in a way that made the melody feel alive. She had become the center of attention, effortlessly, without saying a word. Her heart raced, but in a different way now. It wasn't fear or doubt. It was exhilaration. She could feel the power of the music, the way it made people listen, the way it reached them in ways that words never could. Each note carried her story, her years of quiet dedication, her longing to be understood. And now, finally, someone was listening. By the time she finished, there was a moment of stunned silence. No one moved. The sound of her last note still hung in the air, and it felt as though the room itself was holding its breath. And then, slowly, applause began. One hand clapped, then another, until the entire room was clapping, some people even standing. The teacher, who had underestimated her completely, smiled, a little teary-eyed. The classmates who had ignored her or laughed quietly now looked at her with amazement. She had transformed from the quiet, overlooked girl into a musician, capable of capturing the hearts of everyone in the room. She stood up, slightly shaking, and gave a small bow. Her cheeks flushed, not from embarrassment but from the rush of emotions. She had been underestimated, overlooked, and dismissed, and now she had proven herself, not with words but with the music that had lived inside her all along. After that recital, things began to change. People approached her asking how she had learned to play so well. Some wanted to see her perform again. Others simply wanted to tell her that her music had moved them. Invitations to small school events and local gatherings began to appear. For the first time, she felt recognized, not for trying to be seen, but for simply being herself and letting her talent shine. Even with the growing attention, she remained humble. She still practiced quietly at home, still spent hours alone at the piano, perfecting melodies and exploring new ones. But now there was a spark of confidence within her, a small but steady flame that told her she belonged, that her music mattered, and that her voice, though quiet, could reach far beyond the walls of her small living room or classroom. Her parents noticed a difference too. They saw the joy in her eyes, the determination in her hands, and the way she carried herself. They realized that their quiet daughter had a gift that deserved to be nurtured, and they began to support her more actively, attending recitals, helping her find music teachers, and encouraging her in ways they hadn't before. Even her classmates began to change their perception. Those who had once ignored her or dismissed her talent now watched her with curiosity and respect. Some tried to engage with her about music, asking questions or seeking advice. The girl who had once been invisible now had a presence that could not be denied, not because she tried to be noticed, but because she had shown the world what she was capable of when given the chance. That quiet evening, as she sat at the piano in her room after another long day of practice, she reflected on how far she had come. The piano had always been her refuge, her companion, and her voice when she had none. And now, through her music, she was beginning to be heard, seen, and appreciated in ways she had only dreamed of. She understood something important. Talent and passion don't always need to be loud to be powerful. Quiet people can possess extraordinary abilities, hidden strengths, and brilliance that the world may overlook at first glance. And sometimes it takes just one opportunity, one small stage, or one audience to reveal the extraordinary. As she closed her eyes and let her fingers drift over the keys once more, she felt a mix of gratitude and anticipation. This was only the beginning. The world had started to notice her, but more importantly, she had discovered the courage to let herself be seen and heard. And in that quiet room, with the soft glow of the lamp and the gentle hum of the city outside, the girl who had always been underestimated played on, unaware of how far her music would carry her in the days to come. The morning after the recital, she woke up with a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. Yesterday had been unforgettable. The applause, the wide eyes, the whispered compliments, it all felt surreal. She had spent so many years unnoticed, quietly practicing in her room, imagining what it would feel like if someone truly heard her music, and now it had happened. She dressed quickly, pulling on her favorite sweater and walking to the piano in the living room. Even though the house was quiet, she felt a spark of purpose. Music had always been her companion, and now it seemed to be her bridge to the world. As she sat at the keys, her fingers remembered the melodies she had played countless times before. But today they felt different, lighter, freer, as if they were aware of the new opportunities ahead. Her parents peeked in and smiled. "We saw how people reacted yesterday," her mother said softly. "You were incredible. You should keep playing, keep sharing your music. It's too special to stay hidden." She nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest. For the first time, she didn't feel like the shy, invisible girl she had always been. She felt capable, recognized, and ready to take the next step. But even with that newfound confidence, she remained humble. She knew this was just the beginning, and that real growth came from hard work, patience, and dedication. At school, word of her performance had spread quickly. Students who had barely noticed her before now whispered about her talent. Some were genuinely curious and approached her politely, asking if she would play for them sometime. Others watched from a distance, still skeptical, but unable to ignore the fact that the quiet girl could play the piano like a seasoned musician. She didn't let it overwhelm her. Instead, she focused on her practice, letting the music guide her. She played during breaks in empty classrooms and even quietly in the hallways, testing herself and refining her technique. With every practice session, she grew more confident, more expressive, and more attuned to the emotion that music could carry. One day, the school announced another recital, this time for a larger audience that included parents, teachers, and students from other classes. Her teacher suggested that she perform again, mentioning that someone of her talent deserved to be showcased more widely. She hesitated for a moment, feeling the familiar anxiety creeping in. But then she remembered the applause from the last recital, the looks of surprise and admiration, and the feeling of being truly seen. She agreed, knowing that this could be another step forward. In the days leading up to the recital, she practiced tirelessly. Each morning, she arrived early to the school music room, her fingers dancing over the keys, exploring every melody and chord. She experimented with dynamics, expression, and phrasing, making sure that every note told a story. Her music became more than just technical skill. It became an emotional language that spoke directly to those who would listen. The day of the recital arrived, and she could feel the tension in the air. The hall was larger than the classroom where she had performed before, filled with parents, teachers, and students she didn't know. The audience chatted quietly, unaware of the remarkable performance that was about to unfold. She sat at the grand piano, taking a deep breath. Her hands hovered over the keys, and for a moment she felt the weight of expectation pressing down on her. Could she do it again? Could she truly capture the hearts of this larger audience? Then she closed her eyes, took another breath, and let her fingers find the first notes. The music began softly, almost hesitantly, and then grew in confidence. Each melody, each chord carried emotion and depth. The audience fell silent. People who had come casually, unsure what to expect, now leaned forward, captivated by the sound. Teachers who had once doubted her skill watched in awe. Parents whispered to each other, impressed by the talent that seemed to have come out of nowhere. As she continued to play, she noticed something extraordinary. The music didn't just fill the hall, it seemed to touch people in ways words never could. Some had tears in their eyes, moved by the emotion behind each note. Others smiled, feeling the joy, the longing, or the peace that her music brought. Even the students who had once ignored her were now watching with rapt attention, silently acknowledging the brilliance they had previously underestimated. When she finished, there was a moment of stunned silence. Then the applause began, first slowly, then growing louder and stronger until the entire hall erupted. People stood clapping and cheering, some even calling out her name. She felt a rush of emotions, pride, gratitude, and a deep, fulfilling joy that she had never experienced before. After the recital, teachers and parents approached her with compliments and questions. Some asked if she had formal training, some wanted to know how long she had been playing, and others simply expressed amazement at the beauty of her music. But what touched her most was seeing the genuine admiration in the eyes of her peers. The quiet girl who had been overlooked and underestimated was no longer invisible. She had shown them the power of talent, dedication, and passion. Even with all the recognition, she remained grounded. She knew that talent alone wasn't enough. Hard work, practice, and a love for music were what truly made her remarkable. She continued to practice every day, exploring new pieces, experimenting with styles, and challenging herself to grow. Music had become more than a hobby. It was her voice, her expression, and her way of connecting with the world. Her growing reputation began to attract attention beyond the school. A local music teacher, who had heard about her performance, reached out and offered private lessons to help her refine her skills further. She was hesitant at first. She had always practiced alone, but she agreed, realizing that guidance from someone experienced could help her reach new heights. The lessons opened new doors. She learned advanced techniques, how to interpret music more deeply, and how to express emotion through subtle changes in tempo and dynamics. Each session left her inspired and more confident, reinforcing the belief that she could achieve extraordinary things if she continued to work hard. At the same time, she remained connected to the music that had always been her refuge. She still spent quiet evenings at home, playing the melodies that had comforted her in lonely times, imagining audiences, and dreaming of stages she had never seen. Her music was both a personal sanctuary and a bridge to the world, allowing her to express what words could not. By the end of the school year, She had performed multiple times, each recital more confident and expressive than the last. Teachers who had once dismissed her talent were now vocal supporters. Parents were amazed by her dedication and skill, and classmates had come to respect and admire her. The shy, quiet girl who had been underestimated had proven herself, not by boasting, but by letting her talent shine naturally. One afternoon, after another performance, she sat alone at the piano, reflecting on how far she had come. She realized that her journey was not just about playing well. It was about courage, persistence, and the willingness to share her gift even when no one seemed to notice. She understood that being underestimated could be a hidden advantage. It allowed her to grow quietly, to practice without pressure, and to develop a depth of skill and emotion that might have been impossible if she had been in the spotlight from the start. And as she played that evening, letting the music flow freely, she felt a sense of fulfillment unlike anything she had known. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a companion, a storyteller, and a guide. It had carried her from quiet obscurity to the attention she had always secretly longed for, and it promised to carry her even further. For the first time, she imagined the possibilities ahead, larger recitals, competitions, and perhaps even stages she had only dreamed of. But she also knew that no matter how far she went, she would remain true to the music that had always been hers. It was not about fame or recognition. It was about connection, expression, and the simple joy of letting her talent be heard. That night, as she closed the piano lid and sat quietly in her room, she realized something important. Being underestimated had not been a curse. It had been a chance to grow in secret, to refine her skill, and to prepare herself for the moments when the world would finally notice. And when those moments came, she would be ready, not just to play notes, but to tell a story through music that no one could forget. She fell asleep with a soft smile, her dreams filled with melodies, applause, and the feeling that finally, she was exactly where she was meant to be, at the piano, sharing her music with the world. The weeks following her second recital passed in a blur of practice, performances, and growing attention. She had discovered something incredible. The quiet, shy girl that everyone had underestimated could, through music, command a room without speaking a single word. But with recognition came a new challenge: expectations. People began to notice her beyond the school walls. Parents, teachers, and even students from other schools started talking about the young pianist who could play like a prodigy. One day, a local music teacher approached her after school. He was a kind man with gentle eyes and an encouraging smile. "I heard about your performance," he said. "I teach private students in advanced piano techniques. You have real talent. Would you like to come for lessons?" She hesitated. Private lessons meant committing more time, more effort, and stepping further into the spotlight. She was used to practicing quietly at home with no one watching, but something in his voice, calm, respectful, and encouraging, gave her the courage to say yes. The lessons changed everything. He introduced her to music she had never seen before. Complex pieces, intricate finger techniques, and compositions that demanded emotional depth as well as technical skill. At first, the work felt overwhelming. There were moments when she doubted herself, when her fingers fumbled, and when she wondered if she was truly ready for this challenge. But slowly she adapted. Each practice session became a journey, each mistake a lesson, and each small victory a boost of confidence. As her skills grew, so did her opportunities. A small community music festival announced that they were looking for young talents to perform. She was hesitant again. Festivals meant performing in front of strangers on a larger stage with lights and cameras. She had done well in school recitals, but this was something bigger. Her parents encouraged her, gently reminding her that her music was meant to be shared, that she had a gift others would want to hear. On the day of the festival, she arrived early, her heart pounding. She saw other young pianists preparing. Some practiced with intensity, some chatted nervously, and some seemed completely at ease. She felt a pang of doubt. Would she measure up? Would the audience care? When it was her turn, she walked onto the stage and sat at the grand piano. The lights shone down and the audience's murmurs seemed to fade into the background. She placed her fingers on the keys, closed her eyes for a brief moment, and let the music flow. The first note echoed through the hall, soft and precise. Then came the second, third, and fourth, each one building into a melody that seemed to breathe life into the room. The audience leaned forward, captivated by the unexpected skill and emotion pouring from the young pianist. Every note, every pause carried meaning, drawing them deeper into the story she was telling through her music. By the middle of her performance, people were leaning on the edges of their seats, completely absorbed. Some had tears in their eyes. Some whispered to their neighbors, unsure of how to describe the emotions the music stirred in them. Even the judges, experienced musicians themselves, were clearly impressed, exchanging quiet nods and murmurs of admiration. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Hands clapped, people stood, and a few even cheered out loud. She felt a rush of emotion she had never experienced before, a mixture of relief, pride, and pure joy. She had stepped out of her quiet world and shown the world the music she had nurtured for years, and it had been received with awe and appreciation. Afterward, the festival organizers approached her with a smile. "We'd love for you to perform in our bigger city events," one of them said. "Your talent deserves a wider audience." She nodded, feeling both excited and nervous. The thought of performing in bigger venues with larger audiences seemed daunting, but she realized something important. Each performance, each step forward, was another opportunity to share her music and connect with people in a way words never could. The festival performance became a turning point. Videos of her playing circulated on social media, shared by attendees and local news outlets. Comments poured in, praising her skill, her emotion, and her humility. Messages came from other young musicians expressing admiration and asking for advice. People from all over the city were beginning to recognize her talent. Despite the growing attention, she stayed grounded. She continued to practice, often alone, working on new pieces, refining old ones and exploring styles she had never attempted before. The piano remained her sanctuary, a place where she could express herself freely without judgment and where she could continue to grow. Her parents were amazed at the transformation. The quiet, shy girl who had once been overlooked was now performing for hundreds, gaining recognition and inspiring others. They supported her fully, attending performances, helping her manage her schedule, and encouraging her to pursue every opportunity that came her way. Even her classmates, who had once underestimated her, began to treat her differently. They approached her with curiosity and respect, no longer whispering about her in the hallways but asking questions about her performances, her practice, and her experiences. She found it strange at first, but also gratifying to see that her perseverance and talent were finally being acknowledged. As weeks turned into months, she received invitations to perform at schools, community centers, and even charity events. Each performance was an opportunity to share her music, to connect with people, and to inspire others. She discovered that her talent wasn't just about playing notes perfectly. It was about conveying emotion, telling stories, and touching hearts in ways that were unique and personal. One day, a renowned pianist and music instructor visited one of her performances. After watching her play, he approached her and said, "You have an extraordinary gift. Your technique is impressive, but your ability to convey emotion through music is rare. You could go far in the world of professional music." She felt a mix of pride and humility. The thought of pursuing music professionally had crossed her mind, but it had always seemed distant, almost unattainable. Yet now, with guidance, encouragement, and experience, she began to believe it was possible. She realized that her quiet nature had not been a limitation. It had allowed her to develop patience, focus, and depth in her playing that others might not have achieved. Around the same time, she began to mentor younger students at her school who were interested in learning the piano. She remembered her own struggles, the fear, the self-doubt, and the moments when she wondered if anyone would notice her talent. She wanted to help others find their voice just as she had found hers. Teaching others not only strengthened her own skills, but also gave her a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. Through it all, she remained humble. She never sought the spotlight, but she learned that talent could not remain hidden forever. Her music spoke for her when words were not enough, and gradually, people began to understand that the quiet girl they had underestimated held a brilliance they could no longer ignore. One evening, after a particularly moving performance at a local charity event, she sat alone at the piano in the quiet of the auditorium. The lights had dimmed, and the applause had faded, leaving only the soft echo of her final note. She reflected on her journey, From quiet practice sessions in her room to standing on stages in front of audiences who listened with rapt attention. She realized that her perseverance, patience, and love for music had brought her this far, and as she played one last melody that night, her fingers flowing effortlessly over the keys, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The quiet girl who had been underestimated had not only discovered her own strength, but had begun to inspire others. She had learned that talent, when combined with dedication and courage, could break through the walls of doubt and invisibility. Her journey was far from over. She knew there would be new challenges, bigger audiences, and more opportunities to grow. But she also knew that no matter what, she had discovered something invaluable, the power of her own voice expressed through music, and the understanding that even the quietest person can leave an unforgettable mark on the world. As she closed the piano lid and walked out of the empty auditorium, she smiled softly. The road ahead was full of promise, and she was ready to face it, one note at a time, one performance at a time, and one heart touched at a time. By the time the next school term began, her life had already started to change in ways she had never imagined. The quiet, shy girl who had once gone unnoticed in hallways and classrooms was now someone people looked to with admiration. Invitations to perform at school events, community gatherings, and even local competitions had become more frequent. Each opportunity brought both excitement and nerves, but she had learned to channel her emotions into her music, letting each note convey what words could not. One crisp morning, after a practice session at her piano teacher's studio, she received a phone call that would alter the course of her musical journey. A representative from a prestigious citywide music competition had seen a video of one of her performances. They were inviting her to audition. She felt a mix of disbelief and nervousness. Competing at such a high level was intimidating. The other participants would likely be highly trained young musicians, many with years of formal instruction and experience. Could she measure up? Her parents encouraged her, reminding her that this was not about comparison but about growth. "Just go and show them who you are," her mother said. "Your music speaks for itself." Her piano teacher added, "Remember, you have something special that no one else has. Trust yourself and your talent." The day of the audition arrived, and she stepped into a grand concert hall for the first time. The space was enormous, with rows of seats stretching far beyond what she had ever performed in front of. She could feel the nerves building, her heart racing. She looked around at the other young musicians, many of whom carried the confident air of experience. Doubt crept in, but she took a deep breath and reminded herself of all the hours she had spent practicing, all the nights she had poured her heart into the piano when no one was watching. When her turn came, she walked to the piano, her fingers lightly touching the keys as if greeting an old friend. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the familiar comfort of the instrument beneath her hands. And then she began to play. The first note was soft but deliberate. The melody built gradually, capturing the attention of everyone in the room. Judges and audience members leaned forward, listening intently as her fingers moved with precision, grace, and emotional depth. Every chord told a story, of quiet determination, of years spent in practice, and of the courage it had taken to step into the spotlight. By the middle of her performance, the hall was silent except for the music. Even the most experienced judges were visibly moved, exchanging impressed glances. People who had underestimated her could no longer deny what they were hearing. She was no longer the quiet, invisible girl. She was a young musician capable of commanding a stage, touching hearts and leaving a lasting impression. When she finished, the silence lingered for a moment before the room erupted in applause. The sound was overwhelming, and she felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She had done it. She had stepped beyond her fears and doubts, and her music had spoken louder than any words ever could. After the audition, the judges approached her. "Your talent is extraordinary," one of them said. "Your technique is excellent, but what really sets you apart is the emotion you convey. You have a gift, and it's rare to see someone of your age perform with such depth and feeling." The recognition was exhilarating, but also humbling. She realized that while talent opened doors, it was persistence, passion, and authenticity that made people remember her. She left the audition with a sense of pride, but also a renewed commitment to her music. Over the following weeks, she received the official results. She had been selected to perform in the final round of the competition, Alongside some of the best young pianists in the region, the news was thrilling, but it also brought new pressure. The final performance would be in front of a large audience, including music critics, professional musicians, and local media. She spent every day preparing, practicing tirelessly, perfecting every piece she would play, and refining her interpretation to convey not just technical skill, but also feeling and nuance. Her piano teacher worked with her on stage presence, breathing techniques and ways to channel her nerves into energy that enhanced her performance. She learned that being a musician wasn't just about playing notes perfectly. It was about creating an experience that could move and inspire an audience. The day of the finals arrived and the concert hall was packed. Families, music enthusiasts, and fellow competitors filled the seats. She walked onto the stage feeling the familiar flutter of nerves but also a quiet determination. She sat at the grand piano, took a deep breath, and let the first note ring out. The music flowed effortlessly. Each note, each phrase carried emotion and meaning. The audience was captivated, listening to the young pianist who had once been underestimated, now commanding the stage with confidence and grace. She played as if the piano were an extension of herself, telling stories of hope, resilience, and passion that transcended words. When the final note faded, the hall erupted into applause. Standing ovations, cheers, and claps filled the room. Judges were visibly moved, and even the competitors who had initially seemed intimidating approached her with admiration and respect. She realized that she had not only performed well, but had touched people with her music in a way that few could. Following the competition, opportunities began to expand rapidly. Music schools offered scholarships, and invitations to perform at recitals, festivals, and local concerts came in. But she remained grounded. She continued to practice, teach younger students, and play for the sheer love of music. Recognition and success were gratifying, but she understood that the heart of her journey was not fame. It was connection. Music had given her a voice, a way to express herself, and a chance to inspire others. She also began to understand the importance of mentorship. Her piano teacher and other professionals who had guided her shared insights, encouragement, and constructive feedback. She absorbed these lessons eagerly, knowing that every piece she learned, every nuance she perfected, was part of a larger journey toward mastery and self-expression. Through it all, she never forgot the quiet beginnings, the nights she practiced alone in her room, the moments of doubt, and the times when she had felt invisible. Those experiences had shaped her, teaching her patience, humility, and resilience. They reminded her that talent alone was not enough. Perseverance, dedication, and the courage to share her gift were just as important. Her story began to inspire others. Young students who had once been shy or overlooked saw her as proof that quiet determination and passion could overcome obstacles. Parents shared her performances online, praising her humility, skill, and emotional depth. Teachers spoke of her as a role model for perseverance and dedication. One afternoon, after a particularly moving performance at a city recital, a music critic approached her. "You have something special," he said. "Not just technical skill, but the ability to move people with your music. Keep sharing it. You'll go far." She nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. The journey was far from over, but she understood that every step, every performance, every practice session had led her to this moment. She had proven not only to others but also to herself that quiet strength, passion, and perseverance could break through any barrier. As she walked home that evening, her mind replayed the journey that had brought her here, from shy beginnings, hours of private practice, and small school recitals, to standing on grand stages and receiving accolades. She had learned an important truth. Being underestimated was not a weakness. It was a challenge, an opportunity to grow, and a chance to reveal one's true potential. That night she sat at her piano in her room, softly playing a piece she had composed herself. It was tender, reflective, and filled with emotion, a testament to the journey she had traveled. She realized that the music she played was more than sound. It was a story, a message, and a gift she could share with the world. And as she closed the piano lid and looked out at the quiet city lights, she felt a sense of fulfillment and anticipation. Her journey had already changed her life, but it was far from over. There were still new challenges to face, new stages to perform on, and new audiences to inspire. Yet she felt ready. She had discovered her voice, her passion, and her power to move hearts through music. The girl who had once been underestimated had now begun to shine, not because she sought attention, but because she had embraced her gift, nurtured it, and allowed it to be heard. And the world was only just beginning to notice.